forgot the window. Give it a second, hang on.
I think I'm going to get out here. I'm going to call Robbie. I heard he just brought a new AU Falcon.
Wait, hang on, I can fix it. Oh, never mind. Guess I can't compete with an AU Falcon anyway. Hey guys, and welcome back to Brownie's Garage. As you may have guessed from the intro there, today we'll be working on diagnosing some issues with power windows and how to fix these. The car we'll be working on for this will be my daily driver, a VE Commodore, but this video will be aimed to help with most common power window systems. If you are looking for something more specific to this VE Commodore, such as replacing the parts that we will today, then I'll also have a video for that down in the description below, as well as the parts we'll be using. Now, for some of these tests today, we will be using a multimeter. This is quite an expensive unit, but any old cheap unit will do for these tests. They can be had for as little as around $20, and they're a really handy tool to have, so I recommend picking up one of these. Now, before we even get to the multimeter, there are a few things we can check without the multimeter or pulling any panels or parts off the car, so let's have a look at those. For example, let's say we try and put down one of our rear windows using the master switch in the front but get no response. Well, these have their own switch in the back and they normally work even if there's a fault with that front master switch. So we can test it here, and if your window goes down, we can feel pretty safe in saying that that front master switch has an issue. If this one doesn't work and your front master switch isn't working at all, but the other windows are, pretty safe again to say that there is an issue with that motor there perhaps, or the wiring to it. Well, what about listening for any noises? If you hit the switch and hear strange or grinding noises or that sort of thing coming from your door, pretty good chance there's something wrong with the motor and the assembly in there. Or, more subtly, what about what we have with this car? Listen to this. When we hit that switch, there's only a small clicking sound. Again, it's a pretty good indication that the switch is working, the signal's getting to the door, but the motor isn't actually working. One last thing you can check before diving into pulling things apart, if you've had no luck with those last two, is the condition of the wires from the body of the car to the door, or if they're even there. These wires can sometimes get pinched or otherwise damaged, or may not even be ran. This is normally really only the case if your car's been in an accident and had panels replaced, but it's worth checking out quickly. It does happen. But what if we don't have one of these more obvious signs? Well, I'm pretty certain I know what the issue is on this car, but we'll work through diagnosing an unknown issue. And for this scenario, we'll say that our driver's side window isn't going up and down, because it isn't at the moment. The process we'll be using is one of elimination, so we'll work from the furthest point of the system at the end and work our way back up. So in this car, we're going to start at the master switch. In this car, it's in the center console here, but it may be on your door panel in another car. Fortunately, this just clips in with 6 clips. I'm going to crack out the trim removal tools, quickly get this out, and we'll have a better look. So your switch is out and we can start testing. We'll start with the basics. Is this switch even getting power? Easy to see in this car before the switch was out because these buttons illuminate, but we can do a fairly basic test that will work on any car. What we're going to do is a basic voltage test. So get your multimeter out and set it to DC voltage. Hopefully you can see that there. You'll then want your black wire or your black probe to go to an earth, so a bare metal bolt or anything going to the chassis. Seat rails are quite good for this on any of the unpainted sections, and that's what I've done, as well as those seat bolts going into the floor. They can be perfect for this. Then just take your red probe and look in the wiring plug to those power window switches to see if you can find 12 volts. I've already done this, and hopefully the first one we touch should give us, there we go, 12 volts. So we're pretty confident that this switch panel is getting power and that all of your wiring before this point is fine. If you can't find power there, however, it's a good time to look and make sure that all of your fuses and relays are fine, as well as there's no obvious wiring issues there that could cause it. Although wiring issues would be fairly rare, you're more likely to have a blown fuse or a relay issue if you have those for your power window switches. Moving on to the switch itself, we have a similar issue as we had in the center console there. We don't actually know what each of these individual plugs do or pins, and there's quite a few of them there. I could go ahead and look those up for this particular model, and then we could do a continuity test across those pins that are meant to be connected to see if each of these individual buttons are working. But instead, what we'll do is something a bit more universal. To do this, you'll need access to the door that has the issue, in this car being the driver's side door. The door trim will normally be held on with a combination of screws and clips. Screws will be in most of your key or structural locations, such as behind the door handles or under the armrests, as well as around your door trim panel. Then, most cars will have clips as well, which you'll just be able to work off if you start from the bottom of the door trim and lift it out, not bending it too far, but working your way up. We'll get to that now and come back and show you this next test. Now with that door trim removed and your master switch temporarily plugged back in, we can crack out the multimeter again. What I want to be checking for here is whether any signal from that master switch is actually making it out to this motor. So we've gone ahead and unplugged the plug or the wires running to the back of that motor there, and we can see there that we've got a simple 2-pin plug. Fairly common. If you've got more pins, then this test should be applicable as well. So we're doing a simple voltage test again. Put your multimeter in DC voltage, black probe to a ground, and we'll go ahead and put this into one of these pins. We'll do the test for both pins, but I'll only show one here quickly. All we're going to do now is hit the switch in that center console. Now, don't panic if you don't see any voltage when you push down or up. It will only work for one likely. It's pretty common for the voltage just to be reversed, so it'll change which wire the voltage is going to for which direction that window is actually meant to be going. So I'll go ahead and hit down. Hopefully it is on this one and you'll see some voltage there. There we go. So we'd repeat that test for the other pin. I've already done that off camera and we can see voltage at both those pins. So that's a pretty good sign that that switch is in good condition. It should be. It's pretty much brand new in this car. But if you don't have any voltage going there, don't jump the gun just yet and buy that switch. One more test. Let's jump back in the car and I'll show you that now. So if you weren't getting a signal to the door in that last test, there can be two main reasons for this. The first, of course, is your switch, which we're trying to rule out. The second is a break in the wiring between that switch and the door. That's what we're going to be testing on this one. So set your multimeter. I'll turn this one down. Leave your pin in the wiring to the door there, and we'll remove our earth probe and we'll set our multimeter to ohms. What we're going to be measuring here is whether there's a continuous link from the switch to the wire in the door, as there should be, and there's no breaks. So on a basic meter, you'll be looking for any measurement besides the default. This one has a good feature where I can set it to beep when it detects a completed circuit. So what you'll do is, with your red probe still in the wiring in the door, take your black probe, it can be either way, and go through your wiring plug at the switch and see if you can find a complete circuit there, signifying that that wire is complete to the door. Hopefully I can get this one first go because I've been playing around. It should be this one here. And that beep there and the reading says that that wiring is running complete to that door. No breaks. Do that again for each of your wires. If they check out fine, then you can be fairly certain that there's no breaks in that wiring to the door, and you need to order yourself a new switch. Easy fix, they just pop out. You should have already been in there to do that, and you can just replace that pretty quickly. If not, if you're seeing an issue where there's no continuity between the wiring from your switch to the door, then chances are you have a break in that wiring somewhere. So check your fuses and that sort of thing first, and then go hunting for breaks in the wiring. Most likely spots for this are, as we mentioned earlier, between the body of the car and the door, in that gap there. And I've actually had to do that before in this car, so check that one out if you have no continuancy between the switch and the door. So if all of those tests have checked out fine so far, then congratulations guys. You've probably got an issue with the door motor or part of the assembly, or maybe you've skipped forward to this because you already knew that and you haven't bothered with the tests. Not to worry, they are a little bit fiddly, but they're not terribly difficult to do. You can do them. So easiest way to do it is have obviously your new one ready to go, and then you can see where it will bolt on to your door by where it's threaded or where there's holes. So be ready for that. You'll also have, on this one, we've got two locations. It's fairly common to have two where these attach to the glass and actually hold the glass. Be really careful with that glass when you're undoing this. You don't want that glass to drop in the door and get damaged that way, or to be moving about, sliding and scratching your tint or your glass. A great way to avoid this is to have a soft block of wood, perhaps to prop it up, or you can find somewhere in the door to put it through to prop it up, or of course have a helper to hold that and move it around as you need it. Now getting it out can be a little bit fiddly, but as I said, unbolt it, make sure all your wires are unclipped, take it out, and then when you're reassembling it, just be careful of wires or cables. Make sure they're where they were before and they're out the way of that window. It's not going to cause you any more issues in the future. I'm going to get that one out, hopefully get the new one in, and we'll be back with a working window. Fingers crossed anyway. There it is, job done, and hopefully all of your power windows will be back working too. And next time your muscle bro who eats only protein lets a pants go loose in the car, you'll be ready to crack a window instead of throwing yourself out into traffic to avoid it. Thanks for watching guys. If this has helped or you've enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing. It's only a small thing, but it helps us make more videos like this one. And as always, thanks for watching guys. Cheers.